Now, there are 4 different things that you need to keep in mind as you kind of evaluate whether you want to go for the 19-inch or the 20-inch wheels on your Mustang. The 4 things we're really going to be exclusively discussing is going to be the price, the tire sizes, the ride quality, and of course the performance. Now, I am going to exclude looks out of this comparison because I feel looks are very subjective. Some people like the look of the 20s, some people think it looks too big, they want the 19. So looks are really subjective, so I'm going to exclude from that. I'm just going to tackle it from objective standpoint. All right, so I want to start off with the tire sizes. So I went ahead with the 285 35 19s at the front and also the 285 35 19s in the back. So I have a pretty much square setup, which helps with keep the tires running longer. Now, if you are looking for tire sizes around 285s or so, you shouldn't run into any issues because there's a lot of tires available, whether you're going for summer tires or all season tires. But as you kind of start to go with the staggered setup, or you want to get your rear tires to be maybe 305, 315s, or even 325, you start running into some issues with the availability of the tires for the 19 specifically. So if you want to run a larger setup, especially if you want to go for all season tires as opposed to the summer tire setup, you are probably better off with the 20-inch wheels because that's a more commonly used tire size. For the 20-inch, you can go 305, 315s, a lot of different options that are available for the 20-inch wheel, because I feel like for the 19s, it's mostly performance cars that are running 19s and like bigger, meatier tires in the front and the rear. But for 20s, you've got a bunch of sport SUVs and a lot of other cars that are running 20s with bigger tire sizes, so they're just produced more compared to what you would get with just the 19s. Which brings us to the second point, which is the pricing of the 19 versus 20-inch wheels. And I guess in a way you kind of net out, and you'll see why. I'll break it down for you. So as we said with the tires, as you go for a larger setup on the rear especially, you're gonna have basically a lot of different options if you're going for 20-inch because they're just mass produced. There's some SUVs running them, there's some sedans like sports sedans that are running those tires that kind of match your Mustang's sidewall and everything, so which means that they're obviously produced more than a unique setup for the 19s, so you can get the tires to be a little bit cheaper than what you would get with the 19-inch wheels. So while the tires might be cheaper depending on what size you're running, you are actually going to have to pay a little bit more to get 20-inch wheels. So typically a 19-inch aftermarket wheel, depending on which one you're going with, obviously you can go custom high-end ones, which are $500-600 a piece. These are $300 a piece. You can get most of the aftermarket wheels for the Mustang around $300-250 range for the 19s. If you do go for 20, you are going to run into basically having to pay close to $400 per wheel. So it does add up, which would make it significantly more than the 19-inch setup. So basically, as I said, I think it's kind of a wash because you're gonna save money on the tires because they're just produced more for the 20-inch wheels, but you're gonna pay a little bit more for the 20-inch wheels themselves. So depending on what deals you're able to get on your tires and the wheels, you may come out ahead, you may end up paying a little bit more, or it might just be a wash. So don't really make your decision solely on the factor of cost, because it would truly depend on your individual setup that you're trying to go for in terms of the tire and the specific wheel. So now, money aside, in terms of the tires availability, how much it costs, let's talk about what it truly matters is the ride quality and the performance. So let's start off with the ride quality if you were to get the 19 versus 20-inch wheels on your Mustang. So again, I have 19-inch wheels on mine. So the critical component is each car set up in terms of from the factory what diameter tire it's going to be able to run without basically having the air in your speed meter. So originally I had 255 40 19 on this, so I went with the 285 35 19, and what that means is the sidewall is being compromised now to be able to accommodate a wider tire. I'm having to compromise the sidewall a little bit. So what happens is if you see the gap here right now, this is with the 19. If I was to run the same setup with the 20, the wheel is going to obviously come a little bit more up, which means I'm going to have less sidewall. And you may be wondering, why do I care if there's less sidewalls? Well, sidewall is what helps with the ride quality. So depending on where you are, if you've got terrible roads, there's increased chances of damaging your new wheel, and also overall just a rough ride quality because there's less of sidewall to be able to absorb some of those bumps that you're going to come across on the road. So while 20s may look better depending on your personal opinion, you have to be careful because if you're going to run the same tire size as the 19s, you are going to run into a less of a sidewall 19 versus 20-inch wheels, which could obviously result in a significantly harsh ride. So it all depends on if you have really nice roads, then you're not going to run into any issue. But if you've got roads where you've got potholes everywhere or just a bumpy roads in general, you're definitely going to run into issues where your ride quality is going to suffer a lot. And I personally, I mean, I get it's a performance car, it's not supposed to be a luxury cruiser, but if I can have a comfortable ride for road trips, why not? Which brings us to the last point that we've got here, and that is going to be the performance. Especially if you got a 5.0, you are obviously wanting the best performance you can get from the Mustang or the platform. So the question becomes, should you go 19 or 20? And performance has an impact. And before you say the GT500 has 20-inch wheel, there's a reason for that, but I'll get to it in a minute. So with the 19 specifically, they're gonna be generally lighter than your 20-inch wheels. And the thing is, because obviously 20-inch wheels are going to be much bigger than the 19 ones, so you're going to get a reduced weight compared to a 20-inch wheel. So even if you were to go for the same wheel, 19 versus 20, you are going to notice a weight savings in 19-inch wheel versus the 20. Now, if you're like me, you're probably like, weight savings probably aren't going to be much. And I used to think the same thing until I got these wheels, because these are SV2 wheels. They're about 24 pounds on each corner. The stock wheels I had were about 33, 34 pounds. So I saved only 10 pounds in grand scheme of things. But I honestly felt the car to be a lot lighter and a lot more nimble after I got these aftermarket wheels. So even though they're both my original wheels that the car came with were black accident package wheels that were 19-inch, these are also 19-inch, but just the fact that they're lighter, it has made the car a lot more fun to drive than the stock setup. So basically, if you were going for a 19 versus 20-inch wheels, I think that's going to be a huge significant factor, because the performance is a key thing if you have a Mustang. And if it's a car that's being regularly driven to just a daily driver, maybe car shows and stuff, then yes, 20 may look better. But if you're planning on getting on the car, enjoying the car on the twisty roads, smashing the throttle and having fun, hearing the V8, then 19s may provide better acceleration, better cornering, because it's going to be a much lighter setup. So what do I think? Should you get 19 or 20-inch wheels for your Mustang? Honestly, pricing and tire availability aside, it really depends on what you want out of the car. It's a very subjective answer, because if you're going to keep your car, just daily drive it and have very nice and clean roads, you could probably get away with 20, and subjectively, it could look better depending on what you want out of your car. But if you're going to be getting on the car, cornering it, and really trying to do what Mustang is supposed to do, not the crowds, but basically going around and having fun, then 19s may provide for a better performance and ride quality. And honestly, even if you don't care about the performance, depending on where you are, if the roads are rough, I would highly suggest you stick to the 19 as opposed to the 20, because one, you run the risk of damaging your tires with potholes, because there's going to be less of a sidewall, and it could basically damage your brand new wheel, and wheels are not cheap these days. And of course, if you take the road trips and all of that, if your Mustang is pretty much going to be daily driven, taking road trips, then you want to make sure your comfort is prioritized, and more sidewall generally means better ride quality. Of course, it's going to depend from tire to tire. So if you cheap out on your tires, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to have a pretty rough ride. But if you're going for something reputable tires, you're not going to have issue with the ride quality, and you're really going to enjoy the Mustang on the road trips and also daily driving it. So guys, there you have it. It really depends on what you want out of your car. I personally went ahead with the 19-inch wheels because when I priced out the wheels that I wanted there, like the RTR Tech 5s and 19 versus 20, and compare the tire cost, it was pretty much a wash. It didn't really make much of a difference in terms of cost, but I knew I wanted something that was comfortable. I do take a lot of road trips in the car. Roads around me are fine. They're not too bad, but I do take road trips in the car, and of course I like to kind of push the car a little bit sometimes. So it's nice to be having a lighter car, or at least it feels lighter, and of course not having to worry about the ride quality as I'm trying to take, road trips and just daily driving the car. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment below which setup you are considering for your Mustang, and of course subscribe to Red 50 for more videos.